The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
We are those guys. We hope to be your guys, back with you here, counting down to week 7. Don't worry, you didn't miss an episode last week. I was a little tied up, Nick Ferguson, now a father of 2, family of 4. Things are outstanding, but we made it. We're here because regardless of what goes on in our personal lives, the National Football League will continue to roll along. Nick Ferguson, former 10-year NFL safety. What's going on, my man?
It is fall and we're heading into another week of football. It seems like it's going by too fast.
I can hear Ed Sable's voice over like the classic NFL films music with the crisp, you think Raiders, right? The autumn wind is a pirate. For those of you in Denver, Colorado, Nick Ferguson, or anyone who is not where I am in Southern California, probably feeling those fall conditions. And, the leaves are changing. And teams are changing as well, Nick. This week was rocked by a pair of premier wide receivers on the move. Davante Adams reuniting with Aaron Rodgers, and Nathaniel Hackett with the New York Jets, with the Raiders getting a third-round pick in return. There are some conditions, but we're pretty much assuming it's a third-round pick, barring the Jets don't make it to the Super Bowl. Meanwhile, Amari Cooper now being traded from Cleveland to the Buffalo Bills. So you talk about the rich getting richer. Look, the AFC East was already as tough as can be. We saw these teams duke it out in a very competitive Monday Night Football game, and now they both get stronger. Let's start with Davante Adams, Nick. Back with Aaron Rodgers, back in this type of offense. Does, a big acquisition like Adams kind of fix this offense that has to, carry the load, knowing that this is a top 5 defense, or they need to pick up their share of the weight?
This doesn't fix any of the issues for the New York Jets.
Wow.
On the surface, it appears as though it does, because you are putting Davante Adams back with Aaron Rodgers. But let's be totally honest about this Jets team. They revamped and retooled their offensive line. It was supposed to be better than it was last year, but they're still having issues as far as protecting, but more importantly, blocking for Breece Hall. I thought the Jets were going to come out and light the league on fire, making those adjustments on the offensive line and being able to run the ball better. That has fallen off. But the other thing is, Aaron Rodgers hasn't really been himself. Now, you can try to blame Mike Williams as though Aaron Rodgers did after the game.
And look who's available for trade now that Davante Adams is
here. The guy who had a hamstring injury, and it was a Festivus miracle. He was healed. He's ready to go, and he's expected to play on Sunday. But this doesn't resolve the issues, because think about it. The Jets only have Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers on loan for maybe 1 or 2 years.
Right.
And listen, the best that the Jets can do over 2024 and 2025, maybe get in the playoff picture, maybe make a little noise. Is this a team that can get you to the Super Bowl? I don't think so. And the addition of Adams is only going to make things worse for the Jets, because it's going to fill the fan base with false hope, only to be let down.
Well, you talk about a number of weapons, and high-profile ones at that. You listed Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and they have emerging players like Braylon Allen, and certainly, we know what we're getting in Allen Lazard. But this is a football team that's 2-4, that are coming up on Sunday Night Football against a good Pittsburgh Steelers defense that, can kind of attack all the areas that they need improvement on, and receiver not necessarily being one of them, but just the comfortability that Rodgers has. This is a Jets offense that's coming off of their, let's say, one of their better performances this season for the first 6 weeks of the year, going toe-to-toe with the Buffalo Bills. And what I think is interesting is the best version, the back-to-back MVP seasons of Aaron Rodgers, without Davante Adams, was with Matt LaFleur. And the use of pre-snap motion, identifying defenses rather than having Rodgers diagnose at the line or reacting, which is a testament to what a talented player that he remains to be. The pre-snap motion, I think, against Buffalo really helped in determining what the best route of this offense getting down the field would be for the New York Jets. They're still unbalanced. They still need to commit to running the football, which is harder to ask now that you have Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams that both command targets. But I'm optimistic that if they play at a league average, this defense remains top 5, um, then they could be competitive for a wild card spot. They're now, what, 3 games behind the Bills after they just lost on Monday night? But
Yep.
organizationally, they fire their head coach. Maybe we connect the dots and say Robert Saleh wasn't as desperate to bring in a Davante Adams as maybe Joe Douglas, the general manager, fighting for his job now as well. But it's an incomplete report card. It's 6 weeks through. We haven't seen what it's like for Adams to get settled in this version of the Aaron Rodgers offense. But I have to be a little more optimistic than at least what I saw the first 6 weeks. Um, y- y- you know, I still don't have any lofty expectations beyond 9 wins and competing for a wild card position. Do you want to, let's see, do we want to stay in the AFC East or kind of the ripple effect with the Raiders now, who Mark Davis was quoted? We traded Devontae Adams for Tom Brady and a third round pick.
Tom Brady in the third round pick. See, that would sound great if Tom Brady was donning the silver and black and he would fire up their fan base, but he's just somewhat of a minority owner that maybe used to bring in sponsors and sells tickets. But getting rid of Davante Adams, for me, it spells doom for the Las Vegas Raiders because here's why. What receivers do you have? You have a bunch of young receivers with Jacoby Myers being a veteran. You got rid of Hunter Renfro to start the season, which I thought was the wrong idea. And
Smart.
then you didn't draft a quarterback, and you didn't even allow Aiden O'Connell to remain your quarterback and then build around him. You decided to go out and get Gardner Minshew, only to tear things down to try to rebuild them, but still promote, sell to the fan base. Look at this shiny little toy we have here. His name is Tom Brady. Like that is going to change how the fans feel about the Raiders. But really quickly, Buffalo bringing in Amari Cooper. This is
Yeah.
Amari Cooper's 4th team. And it was a desperate ploy by Brandon Beane. A lot of teams being desperate, the Jets being desperate, the Bills being desperate because they had Stephon Diggs. But Stephon Diggs was a true receiver. He wanted the damn ball, like Keyshawn Johnson said. But guess what? He's got a quarterback who wants all the glory, but not all the responsibility. But then you realize you made a mistake. So now you got to go get Amari Cooper, who I still believe has something in the tank, has something to give. But does this move make the Buffalo Bills a contender? I say no.
Hmm. Well, define contender because they're leading the division. We just panned the Jets. The Dolphins and the Patriots aren't going anywhere. So is this a team that, before the addition of Amari Cooper, walks to that AFC East division title? I think they're 5th in a row, but just no aspirations for them to win a playoff game, Nick? Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah, because I mean, if you're talking contender, we're talking Super Bowl contender. We're not talking playoff contender. I mean, that's the lane that the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen have lived in for the past couple of years. It is time for them to get past that hurdle, which is Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. But we saw when they faced Baltimore after demolishing Jacksonville, building up the
Yeah.
hopes of Bills Mafia, only to watch it just kind of wither away when Derrick Henry ran all through their defense.
Right. So there are clearly issues that they were having to make sacrifices. It's a Josh Allen extension. It's the money that they gave to Von Miller. I mean, that's, Brendan Bean in your desperation. I always harken back to they absolutely nailed the quarterback selection. And frankly, the fact that Josh Allen worked out to the way that he has been a detriment to so many other teams that believe that they see this ball of clay and they can mold it into a Josh Allen type of player. Meanwhile, it's just Paxton Lynch, it's just Trey Lance, it's just, these toolsy guys that don't work out. And teams are convinced that they can do whatever the Buffalo Bills were able to do. Again, they drafted Allen. Setting that aside, they spent so much premium capital on defensive players and yet still felt the need to go out in free agency to pay a premium for a Von Miller, for other pieces of this offense that, or I'm sorry, of that defense that, listen, they let both of their starting safeties walk in free agency. And as much of a great story DeMar Hamlin is, for I, I mean, coming back um, to life, but just not the same type of player that they were used to in Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. So the deficiencies on the defense, I agree with you, are keeping them back from being a true contender. But offensively, they focused on the run. They did well in selecting Ray Davis, who weathered the storm of a James Cook injury, and he may be that guy who has the red zone carries where James Cook operates between the 20s. But Amari Cooper's having a rough start to his season, tied for the league lead in drops. Maybe it's a team stat and how bad Deshaun Watson has been and that dark cloud over the Cleveland Browns franchise, which to that fan base is just another day that ends in Y for them. I guess it gives them an option, and it's also, again, back to Brandon Beam, 6 games into his professional career, Keon Coleman isn't the type of player that they needed at the X. So they paid draft capital to make an upgrade there and to provide, let's call it like it is, a stopgap, while the Cleveland Browns did pay, a majority of this Cooper contract. So on the cheap, they can put somebody out there that Josh Allen can eventually get comfortable with and could, add to their big play potential. So I like it. I don't love it, but I understand the position that the Jets put themselves in with Aaron Rodgers. Meanwhile, the Browns and the Raiders have put themselves in no man's land. Really, we can just hit the snooze button until 2025 with those teams.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I mean, for this Bills team, how far can they really go? I know you're talking about Amari Cooper and leading drops. It just seems as though that chemistry wasn't there. And sometimes it's a change of scenery that invigorates every single person.
Right.
We'll just
But
have to
team
wait and
number
see.
4, or like you said, team number 4
Yeah.
is the change of scenery, but is it kind of fool's gold, Nick? Because listen, this is the 3rd team that has now traded for Amari Cooper, thinking that it would put their offense over the top. Ask the Cowboys, the Browns, and maybe the Bills. They didn't get to the promised land they were hoping for. And same thing with Davante Adams. The Raiders thought that reuniting him with Carr would get them to the promised land. They have one 500 season to show for it before Derek Carr is kicked out the door. We could talk about Tyreek Hill to Miami Dolphins. We can talk about A.J. Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles. At least they made a Super Bowl appearance. But these big swings by some of these teams to give up first, second round draft capital, reset the market at the receiver position. I What example do you have that's worked so far?
Well, there's not a lot of examples to say that that's worked. I mean, if you want to go and look at what the Rams did, pushing their chips to the center of the table, acquiring Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr., well, that is an example working out for one of the teams. But if you ask Sean McVay now, would he do it the same way? Both he and Les Snead? Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Because
And that comes after trading for Stafford, right? They had their quarterback.
yes, right. Because the idea is that what would you will be willing to do for a chance to win the Super Bowl? Luckily for the Rams, they were able to pull it off. Every other team, it goes back to the scenario and the phrase that we often heard. We are one player away from actually getting to where we need to. And
Right.
in the case of the Jets, they just figured as though they were one player away when it came to getting an adequate receiver who had precision timing with their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. But here's the thing, we still don't know. We still have to wait to see it play out. And the great part about it, we're not approaching the final 2 weeks of the season. This is still a long season. So we'll see if the Jets can muster enough offense to get them over the top.
It'll be interesting to see. Both these teams are in prominent roles. The Jets Sunday night against the Steelers, and the Buffalo Bills, meanwhile, hosting the Tennessee Titans. So maybe a get right opportunity for the passing offense, since we're talking about one of the premier rushing defenses, despite their 1-4 record coming out of that bye week. So maybe not the most exciting matchups, but Nick, we each have a game circled for week 7. I want to focus a little bit on the gridiron. I want you to start with the Super Bowl rematch with the Chiefs and the 49ers in Santa Clara. We've got an undefeated Chiefs team coming off the bye week. The Andy Reid post bye week stat is for real. Maybe he's, lost one or two of those games in my lifetime, but we have two teams going in similar directions. Unbelievable injuries, injury luck or bad luck, I should say, and two offenses that are really being carried by their defenses to this point.
Yeah, but the difference is one of those teams is still undefeated,
Right.
right? And just kind of this is the lore of Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, and Andy Reid. They continue to find ways to win football games. Now, obviously, the Cinderella story will eventually come to end, but right now they're still wearing that slipper, and is actually doing well for them because Travis Kelsey doesn't look like himself, and you can blame it on the Taylor Swift, but whatever you want to blame it on. But the offense doesn't look like it needs to.
Right.
Brown was injured early in the year. You had Rashid Rice going down with an injury that he sustained from his quarterback, right? And then Xavier Worthy has become the number one outlet for the Kansas City Chiefs, but their defense continues to keep them in the game because you go back to the game against the Chargers about a week ago, the Chargers really pushed them to the brink, but in typical Chiefs fashion, they found a way to close out games. But that's what you want to do as a championship team. And you look at the San Francisco 49ers, they're having injuries. No Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason is having issues. What's going on with the offense not being able to score as many points? So there's a lot of questions, and I know this is once again be built up as a Super Bowl rematch. To me, we're too deep in the season to really call it that, right?
Or to look to last season when talking about two different teams.
Yeah, it's two different teams going into two different directions. But I had this one circled on my calendar because I do believe it's in Santa Clara, and I'm sure those 49ers fans really want to let the Chiefs fans know how much they despise them.
I may have misspoke when I talked about this 49ers team. They are second in the NFL on offense in terms of yardage, but eighth in scoring. So a little bit of a gap there compared to this defense is not necessarily carrying the 49ers despite the injuries to Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason with that shoulder stinger, gotta watch that AC joint, because Nick, you would know better than I would. Colliding with 300-pound guys, not particularly good on your shoulder. So my matchup for this week would be the NFC North battle with the Lions and the Vikings. Vikings and Lions both coming off of their bye week. But we're talking about one of the best run defenses playing host. We talk about an undefeated team, 5-0, playing host to the Lions that have the number one rushing offense in the National Football League, two incredibly successful runners. This is a Vikings defense that has done really well against the run. However, you go back to their last two seasons, so 4 meetings, those two running backs of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm sorry, their last 3 meetings when Jahmyr Gibbs since he's been drafted. 5 touchdowns by these running back duos. So they may be the exception to the rule with how successful this team is. So the running game is one thing, but the other is how well Jared Goff has been set up against the blitz. In his last 2 matchups against Brian Flores, this coming from PFF data, Goff was blitzed on 57 out of 77 dropbacks, 9 yards per attempt, 510 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks, and 121 passer rating. And over the last 3 weeks of the season, Jared Goff's yards per attempt against the blitz, 21.1 yards. He sees multiple guys coming under pressure. He is going to throw that ball thinking one of his guys downfield can win their one-on-one matchup because the liability in the secondary when Brian Flores sends all those guys in the rush. I'm excited to see it, the Lions offense against this Vikings defense.
Well, it's shaping up to be a great divisional game. You got Aaron Jones for the Minnesota Vikings. I think he's out for that game. But like you said, Brian Flores' defense, with the exception of the Green Bay Packers game with Jordan Love, came out and tried to rally the Packers. They played well this season. And I expect for them to somewhat do it the same way. And Jared Goff has been amazing. So give both Jared Goff and their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, credit for what they have been able to create. And you mentioned, Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs. Look, those are two of the better running back combinations in the NFL. And all Detroit has to do, don't go lose the game.
Yeah.
There is somewhat of an issue for the Detroit Lions because coming into the game, like maybe 2 weeks ago, we were saying, okay, well, Aiden Hutchinson is a beast. He's going to be issues for that Minnesota Vikings offensive line, but he is out with, I guess, a shattered fibula or whatever it was. So now, if you're Aaron Glenn, where is that extra pressure going to come from? And if you can't get pressure on Sam Darnold, he's got a healthy Justin Jefferson. He's got a healthy, Jordan Addison. To me, we're going to see the ball down the field in the vertical passing game. So I don't know if you are giving your prediction, but I'm going to say this one goes to the Minnesota Vikings.
I'll pick the Lions. A great offense is usually better than a great defense in the regular season. In the regular season, that's a caveat. We can talk about the playoffs because these two teams are both playoff bound. Whether or not they meet in a championship game or a divisional round remains to be seen. Nick, week 7, however, kicks off Thursday Night Football. We are recording this on a Thursday. And, I'm seeing Aaron Jones practicing in a limited role for the Vikings. So maybe we do get him involved, even though they're pretty efficient with Ty Chandler, and they just acquired Cam Akers from the Houston Texans, Joe Mixon back to full steam. Your Denver Broncos, Nick, the New Orleans Saints, Thursday Night Football in the Big Easy. We've got one of the better defenses in the Denver Broncos. Their offense is starting to put a few things together. They had won, 3 straight before running into the Chargers this past week. So before we get into the litany of Saints injuries, your optimism for this Denver Broncos team that is a road favorite on Thursday Night Football.
Well, my optimism is for the defensive side of the ball because the offense has yet to really prove that they can do it on a consistent basis. And there's any defense that's on the field for a lengthy period of time, eventually the opposing offense, they're going to pick and find their spots. And that's what happened last week against the Chargers. So this is a game that I'm predicting that the Broncos should and will win, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a guarantee. It's Thursday night. And with Spencer Rattler getting his second start, even though he's down a couple of offensive linemen and 2 of his receivers, to me, I think Clint Kubiak is going to come up with something because they got 2 good tight ends. They got Foster Monroe and Juwan Johnson. So even though they may not have Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, they have 2 capable tight ends. And the tight ends gave the Broncos issues, especially, I guess, a week ago when they faced the Raiders. So I'm never going to say never, but I still say this is a game that the Broncos should win.
Let's take a walk down Narrative Street. This is the first time that Sean Payton is back in New Orleans as the visiting coach. Drew Brees is in attendance because he is being inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame tonight. I think he's going to want to take it to New Orleans. I know things ended amicably, but nothing would make Sean Payton happier than going back to that building, reminding him why there's no other coach with, within 50, 60 wins of him that have coached the Saints in their careers. The wide receiver core is fascinating, with Equanimous St. Brown joining the squad. Bud Means, Mason Tipton, Cedric Wilson, and Equanimous are the receivers available for the Saints tonight. You mentioned the pair of tight ends. Taysom Hill is out for this game as well. It's going to be it's kind of not a turning point, but Derek Carr is expected to miss at least next week after this Thursday. And they could really find themselves after being the hottest 2-0 team in the National Football League, losing 5 straight, and this becoming kind of a lost cause as they kind of put themselves back in, with premium draft capital and no free agent space, no cap space, making free agency difficult for them. So I'm optimistic that the Broncos can take care of business, especially on the defensive side of the football with, Patrick Surtain lining up against a rookie and, the other corners being able to um, stick to their assignments. So that Broncos pass rush could send an extra guy or two for Vance Joseph to play with. So that's kind of exciting for me. This should be a get right game for Denver. 3 points. It could be just a close and ugly game, which is why I think Vegas is where they are with that total projection. So, Nick, I want to say that we're halfway through the fantasy football regular season, 7 weeks into the year, but meanwhile, plenty more football left to get at. I'm excited for week 7, not because it's a potentially winnable game. It's the battle for the number 1 pick in London with my Patriots, but your Denver Broncos have a lot to play for tonight on Thursday night. So, Nick, again, I can't wait to see which of these rookie quarterbacks between your Bo Nix, the Saints, Spencer Rattler, and let's throw Drake May in there. Let's see what these guys have got. We've already got 6 rookie quarterbacks in. I'm sure more by the end of the year.
Well, I don't want to say that undermine the skill set of Spencer Rattler,
Uh-oh.
even though he's a young quarterback. But something I think you should keep in mind. PS2 is not playing in this game.
Is he not? Oh, boy.
He's not playing in this game.
That's my mistake.
He is out with a concussion.
That's right. That's right.
He's going to be Riley Moss and Levi Wallace. And the team has just activated Amari Mathis for the game. So we have to see how that all plays out. And I would say it might even out considering the fact that the Saints are playing with some rookie receivers and the Broncos are playing with some guys, even though Levi Wallace and Damari Mathis are the ones with the most experience. It might even out for Clint Kubiak and Spencer Rattler, but we'll see who takes the most shots, which team plays better defense, but more important, what happens on the turnover battle. That's where this game may be decided because the Broncos were able to go on that 3-game winning streak because they were able to create turnovers, put the offense on the short field, especially for an offense that's been struggling. The Broncos are one of the worst teams when it comes to running the ball, but more importantly on first down and third down. So we'll see how that pans out for them.
10 years in the National Football League, including with those Denver Broncos. He's Nick Ferguson at Nick Ferguson _25. Hit him with questions about your teams, always grinding tape throughout this NFL season. I'm Alex Hardy. We are those guys. We hope to remain your guys throughout the NFL season. Excited for week 7. So, Nick, what do you have to say before we get on out?
Always love butterflies, right? People chasing butterflies. Love butterflies, right? It's not the summer, but I still love butterflies.
That's Nick. Keep flapping, Nick.
Keep flapping.